Hi, guys. My name is Amena K. Thornton, and you are listening to One Up Podcast, and as well as you might be watching this on the YouTube channel under Amena.media. Thank you guys for subscribing to either one. I have here today another message of hope, struggle to success story for you guys. Today, I am welcoming in Daniel Wang, and he's going to be telling us his story on how he migrated from mainland China and all the struggles he had to do mentally to overcome, all the obstacles that he's faced. So he's here now. So I'm gonna go ahead and let him lead us into his amazing story on how he overcame his journey. So go ahead. How do you want to start your story, Daniel?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for
Gosh.
coming. Thank you for coming. So it's always nice to, have people on that want to share their story and share it with everybody, not
Mhm.
just me. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Well, one of the things as you use those words, story and sharing, and what comes up for me is like voice, using my voice, and that is part of the reason why I'm doing this. Because personally, I recognize how voiceless I've been in my life, and how because I was just following along and mimicking what people look like me in this part of the world or in the world in general are doing, and I realized. For me, being born in mainland China and being born in rural mainland China, I recognize I come from a culture that didn't allow the people their own voice.
Hmm.
And when I moved over to the West, got to immigrate back in 1991 at age 7. I recognize I brought those traumas with me, right?
Yeah,
In terms
because
of not
even
being
at
able
the
to.
is it
Mhm.
even at the age of 7, you were less like, I'm classing myself as, this immigrant that's going to be moving into this new country. And so even at that young of an age, you recognized, that something was going to go on, something's going to change, and you had to find comfort in like an identity. Would it would it be?
When I came, honestly, because I was age where I was still discovering, it was wondrous for me when I first got to Calgary, Alberta, because I fell in love with Hollywood movies right away. I
Yeah.
fell in love with like Saturday morning cartoons, and when I was in China, I had a fraction of that kind of magic, like a very minimal amount of that kind of inspiration and beauty and creativity. So it blew my mind when I came from mainland China to Calgary, Alberta, Canada in
And what year was this?
1991.
91. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and experiencing Christmas for the first time, it was like mind blowing. It was like so wondrous.
Did you guys?
But
So, do you guys have any like thing that's like Christmas or not as intense or
there's
what was the
just
difference?
Chinese New Year that's celebrated. So yeah, but I also recognize those like spring festival and celebration of the New Year is it's kind of one of the only joys that Chinese people are allowed, because they work their asses off year round, and it's only on the few vacations are they allowed some joy and some family time, if
How
you
much
will.
time is like the average work time in China? I don't know too much.
It's certainly changed over the years, but people are still working a lot. Like a lot of my relatives are working 6 days a week, and sometimes 6.5 days, and 60-hour plus weeks for the common people, and that's
And this
pretty
is
much
hourly. We're not
lots
saying
of the
like
masses.
salary or anything like that. This is like
It
hourly
will
wage.
depend. It will
Or,
depend. I don't know the situations these
okay.
days, but it's not it's much more difficult in the past, especially in the 80s and 90s for people. Nowadays, it is becoming easier to make money and earn a better standard of living for sure in mainland China. Yeah,
Good.
but what I recognize is as I started to mature and started to become socialized in the Western system, in the school system, so like, junior high, early teens, you then start to, okay, become your environment more. You start to try to fit in. That's when I realized, looking back on why I didn't have my own identity. And I was just trying to follow along and obey and conform. Because being
I was
from,
really quiet myself. I just like I don't know where my clique is. I would call it the cliques, right?
yeah,
You would have like the popular people, the people that are really good with music, the people that are like really good with art, and I'm just
yeah,
like I don't know where I fit in exactly. So
mm,
I just chose to be silent.
oh
So
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I can relate to that very much. And especially in high school. I remember fitting in with all the kids, trying to fit in with all the groups, and I would be able to make some inroads and be accepted in ways. But then later, as high school progressed, I realized as I was hanging out with one group, this other group may judge me or may shun me and talk about me behind my back, all that gossip, because you're supposed to stick to your group. You're supposed to be just from your tribe and represent. But I was actually trying to, fit in with so
Commingle.
many people.
Yeah, I did too. I did too.
Yeah. But also being highly introverted and extremely shy and very quiet all throughout my childhood and growing up, it was not easy navigating that.
No, were you the only child?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Me
Because I
too.
come from the generation that I can only be an only child, because I come from the one child policy
Oh,
of
okay.
mainland China. I come from a
Interesting.
generation of single children. And that in
Wow.
itself is actually very significant, I've realized, is when you come from a generation of single children, and my partner has sisters and brothers, and I realize people that have sisters and brothers, they get an opportunity to learn to share, to learn to compromise with their loved ones, to learn love, to learn friendship, to learn how to be a family, how to be a family unit, how to support each other, how to support each other in being each other. And us, as coming from a generation of single children, we never had that opportunity. We didn't have brothers. We had our cousins. That was kind of like a replacement, but it's not the same for sure. So
Yeah.
I come from a whole generation of single children that created an additional layer of narcissistic personalities. And then as a millennial,
Interesting.
what our generation is giving is another narcissistic dynamic with society, in my point of view.
How so, would you say?
Millennials, like our as millennials, so those coming
I
that are
fall I
from,
fall on I fall on the gap. I
yeah.
was my birth year was 81, so I'm on the gap, so
Yeah,
right in
right.
between.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was 84. So millennials generally right now are like mid-20s to later 30s kind of thing.
Mhm.
And our generation has been pretty much expected to do what our parents and their parents' generation did, which is go out and get a job, get a college degree, earn money, get a home, get a life, get a family, and live till retirement. But that's not available to us anymore. We've been told, the parenting style that we were raised on was do what we tell you, and there'll be a carrot dangling at the end of the stick, and we'll give you the prize.
Mhm.
But the thing us millennial generations are realizing is we followed the orders. We did what the school system told us. We did what the parents told us to do. And we have a degree, we have a mountain of debt, and there's no jobs. So of course it's going to create a narcissistic dynamic in millennials, because the society has represented to us that narcissistic energy.
Energy. Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
generations would pass the baton to the next generation so that the people next generation can take their power. But nowadays, you look at all the people in all the power positions in society, and they're all in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They're not giving the power anymore. They're holding on to it until they die and just passing it to their families.
I
So
can agree.
the baton is not being passed to my generation. So the millennials, of course, we're gonna have challenges and certain struggles, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can understand with that. So back when I guess you were 7, you moved over, and so how was it? I guess the first years, how was the adjustment? Do it. You said, well, you remember really the shift, I guess, in high school, right?
Yeah, the first years, like I said, was great. I got along with my best friends were like a black kid and a white kid in my, before I turned like in my early teens, for example. But like I said, once I started getting to junior high, I remember being bullied, and I just look back on my life, and and all the bullies that I they were Caucasian, and I recognized the effect that had as I entered into later grades. Somehow I automatically knew that other people, like Caucasians, for example, weren't accepting of me. So
Hmm.
I just naturally gravitated to the only group that was other Asians. Frankly, I didn't expect that. I wasn't directing myself to just be a part of the Asian and just to fit in with it. But that's kind of like all I had, I realized. Part of what I realized is in my life, being an immigrant and coming to this country and being a person of color, um, in Terminator, there's that, or the movies that show the robotic, the way the robots view the world and all the hub. So
Yes.
I realized as I was walking through life, my hub, my point of view, my filters was just automatically reddening all the spaces and all the people that I knew wasn't accepting of me, or didn't see me or pay me any mind. And I was just this very narrow pathway, and the groups of people that was not read it out that was available to me. So now looking back, and it's because of all the recent events that's helped me become more introspective and gain a greater awareness of my hindsight 2020 of what I was experiencing in school, because I certainly did not think there was any challenging or marginalization or racism, internal racist dynamics going on. But in fact,
Yeah.
that was very much my experience was completely filtered to my experiences.
Yeah.
There was challenging experiences that traumatized me, that caused me to have certain points of views about myself and life, and to therefore I only navigated it in a certain way. And
Yeah.
that was only what other people that looked like me exampled for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand where, you get, pushed down, like bullied, and then you're like, well, all these people don't accept me, but these people do. So you gravitate more to the people that, of course, is going to accept you time and time again. So yeah, I can understand that definitely. So after high school, so what did you go do? Did you go to college after that?
No. So high school was very challenging. As I expressed, as I tried to fit in with lots of different people and groups, it was challenging as I was shunned or judged for, I don't know, trying to be different. So that was so challenging for me. And I realized I literally don't know how to be myself or authentic with people. And I don't know how to go about this. And I was actually going through so much mental illness, like intense anxiety that was debilitating. Like I had a shyness about speaking in front of the class, doing presentations since I can remember. And that was very challenging for lots of classes that caused me to not do well on certain grades. I would like sometimes even skip a final if I had a zit breakout. I was that like self-conscious,
Yeah.
right? Living in a culture that conditioned me to be so vain, and me being so sensitive, all those pressures, the perfectionism, so it greatly challenged me. High school was a bit of a nightmare, even though it was super fun too, right? I think lots of people can relate,
Yeah, I can relate.
but because with my overwhelming mental illness, I couldn't graduate, and there the storyline was so damning, my inner storyline, because I'm a mainland Chinese immigrant. I should be at the top of the class. And I showed myself that.
Is that what how did your parents handle that? Did you ever tell them like how you were feeling and why you didn't feel like you were really fitting in anywhere?
That's the other piece, because my father was not in my life at all, because his life was completely traumatized due to his own childhood traumas that he was never able to take care, like support himself in, and also the experiences that he had in his career of incidences of discrimination and racism. He was wrongfully accused and put in jail for 4 days, and he was coerced to sign a peace bond, and he basically signed his career away. So he's had to live in poverty ever since, and he was filled. Now that I realize this, I've only realized this in the past couple of years myself.
Wow.
My dad, his career was destroyed due to discriminatory racist dynamics in his workplace, and he lived in poverty from then on. So literally he couldn't even share that with me, and he was filled with so much shame and guilt. He just went off on his own and was never really around for me.
I
And then my
see.
mom was dealing with debilitating depression since my family moved to the West, because she had no intentions to move to the foreign country. My
Oh,
mom
okay.
is actually, I realized, more of a simple, more of a peasant woman, because she grew up with a peasant family that was from rural China. So her whole dream was she was able to work hard, and she's smart, and to become a doctor. Her whole dream was to, both my father and mother were able to become doctors from a small town. So she just wanted to live a good, normal, simple life, being doctors and taking care of the family and having a kid and just living a good life in China, as China was really starting to develop back then. But
Yeah.
as my dad decided to bring us over, and that was due to what happened during 1989, actually, the Tiananmen Square massacre. My dad was actually in Vancouver. working on a collaborative effort with a Vancouver hospital. And because that happened, my dad was actually able to immigrate to Canada easily. And that's what actually caused my family to move. So,
I'm
and
glad you
that,
cleared that up because I was going to ask you that. I was going to
yeah,
say,
because believe
what
me,
brought you over?
I know certainly wasn't easy for someone from rural China to be able to immigrate to Canada back in the late 80s, mid 80s. So, but that happened. And then my dad decided, yeah, I don't want to raise my family in that oppressive culture. So I am going to stay. Because all the countries, when that happened, made it so much easier for any Chinese people to stay in their countries to immigrate. So when my dad decided to immigrate us, that kind of destroyed my mom's idea of what she wanted for her life. But she was all about family, so of course she followed my dad over. But because of that, she's been dealing with debilitating depression ever since, and she's still like learning to deal with it.
Cope. Yeah.
And because my mom, being raised by a single mom who was, now I realize, was literally dealing with suicidal ideation and just intense bouts of debilitation, and she still carried on 2 jobs, supporting herself and me, doing her best, but not knowing how to live so often. I was, at being a sensitive, empathic, highly sensitive person, I totally took on that energy, and
Yeah.
we're now understanding what it is to be raised by a single parent who's suicidal, what that causes a child to become in their navigations of their emotional identity and with other people. So I take a look at those patterns, and of course I was challenged. Of course I would incur mental illnesses and emotional and social anxiety issues. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so putting the pieces together, basically.
So what was the turning point that you're just like, wow, I'm actually still dealing with my past and I'm tired of dealing with that. I want to move forward, and what can I do to get better, and move past that?
Mm-hmm. Now, because I wasn't able to complete high school, I was filled with so much shame, and that literally brought me into years of just dark night of the soul, if you will. I was just, living in a windowless basement room that I was living in since like I was like 16, basically, and I basically I was so challenged with my mental illness and my judgments about myself. I was just working dead end fast food jobs, minimum wage jobs, and I couldn't even hold those down very often. And I was smoking marijuana and judging myself and shaming myself for it. And I was just like so lost, in so much hopelessness and despair and such intense suffering. Like I incurred bulimia and agoraphobia. Like bulimia
What
was
is okay, yeah, what is bulimia? I don't
it's
think
an
I
eating disorder.
Oh,
As
okay.
a man, I didn't even know men can get eating disorders, but yes, of course men can get eating disorders. Bulimia is basically feast and famine. I was so incapable of knowing how to create positive emotions in myself. I was literally, and I was like so challenged in my life. I was working, these dead end jobs, and I would wait till the weekend, and I would go to the Safeway and just buy, all the junk food and just like ice cream, and that so I could have a few hours that I knew I was going to be enjoying something in my
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
right?
but it wasn't
Yeah,
nutritious, and you couldn't
no,
like sustain off of this stuff.
no,
So,
that just caused me, all that toxicity, because it is
yeah,
toxic,
it
all the
is.
processed and junk foods, that
It
just
is.
created toxicity that caused me deeper expressions of the mental illness patterns, and the mental patterns I was experiencing. So that totally brought me down, down, down. But luckily, I did bring myself to rock bottom, and I started to dig myself out. The first thing was just buying apples. I was so poor. I was so hungry. Oh, apples are cheap. I'll start buying apples. Oh, because before then I was so like fruit, vegetables, healthiness. No thanks. But I started loving apples. Oh, these were good. And I started becoming a bit of an apple connoisseur. And that led me
Oh,
to
really?
learning about vegetables. I started like learning from health, all these points
Right?
of views from holistic
Yeah.
alternative health. And I learned about green smoothies. That green smoothies have been a miracle for me. I started to develop a habit of green smoothies in my early 20s, and I invested money and bought a Vitamix back then, which was a lot of money for me, but it was so worth it.
Vitamix are still a little bit expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
before
they
the
were.
Vitamix,
They
yeah,
were.
I mean, I was literally eating like bowls of big raw. It took me like celery, and it took me like an hour to eat all the vegetables. So the
Yeah.
Vitamix was such a blessing, and learning about green smoothies and And those were some of the most powerful medicine I started to take in regularly, right?
Yeah.
Real plant-based nutrition that was so cleansing and detoxifying. Like that was such a big key.
I don't know if it sounds like you were in the same situation I was when I was a kid. There was no real like vegetables or
Yeah,
fruit growing
yeah.
up. And when I see like parents or people that I know, and they're just like, oh, my parents used to try to get me to eat vegetables and stuff. I was like, really? Because we didn't have any. We had like cheese and TV dinners. Like TV dinners was it. That was my life.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely know. And then discovering it, definitely, I think I was in my 20s when I finally like, oh my God, there's actually other food out there. And then, experiencing, definitely the difference. So yeah, I can relate on that.
Yeah,
So.
cool. That's such a key part of it, right? We are what we take in with all our senses, not just what we eat, but that's a huge part of it too. It is so important to.
So you did these green smoothies, and what else did you do to like help
I was
like
taking through
overcome that?
going to workshops, reading all these different articles. I started sinking deeper into nutrition and then self-development. I started exploring, my family doctor when I was in my teens gave a book to my mom to give to me, and it was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Huh.
And my mom passed that to me when I was 19. It took me probably a couple more years before I actually started picking up and cracking the pages, and probably another year of actually because I was not a reader at all before then, and another year before reading these words and trying to understand them. But then slowly but surely I started reading. I started getting audiobooks, and I started getting into all his contemporaries, Wayne Dyers, Louise Hay, Pema Children, Chit Nhan Han, all those, Jack Kornfield, all those amazing, beautiful, spiritual, wise people that have gone on their lives of cultivating wisdom. So I started to infuse my influences with that. Like one of the big things that's different I recognize for me is because, like I said, I took myself into such a dark hole of despair. I had to just leave separate myself from all people because I didn't want to affect my friends negatively, because I knew how hopeless I was feeling. And they were living, in my point of view, they were going about their lives. They were all entering post-secondary. I have a knack.
They were all moving on, and you felt they were in a good direction. You didn't want to, bother them with your problems.
Yeah, and I was so in judgment of myself compared to them, and I certainly didn't want to affect them because I was so sensitive. And I knew how affected I was by other people, so I thought I knew how much we affect each other, so I didn't want to affect. So I literally became such a loner. I just totally started isolating.
Yeah.
But because of that, I recognized, and like I said, I started bringing in all these other influences, right? Whether all these spiritual teachers or self-development kind of.
You surrounded yourself with these mentors.
Yeah. So so I can totally see the differences between being raised by your peers versus choosing your own influences, choosing your own community, your own mentors.
Huge difference. It's a huge, because I've discovered that too, and just like it really does matter who you surround yourself with. It influences everything, and even your environment is like a huge one, like what you smell, what you hear like during the day. So I'm always aware of that too nowadays too, where I'm just like, I don't feel right, is something changed? Did I change something, and then really start to deal with, what can I change here and overcome this, So yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. With the spiritual books that you've read, a lot of those practices, I just want to let everybody know, this is not stuff that just people just wrote up. It's not like, it was, it's stuff that, it's like a fantasy tale or anything like that. This stuff's been around like for cultures way before us. So, and then just passed through the ages. And yeah, it definitely does have some amazing material in there. So I highly recommend anybody to, pick up a good self-development book. So yeah. So, okay. So you dove into the book. What was the book again? The first one you started with?
The Power of Now.
The Power of Now by
Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle?
Eckhart. Yeah. Tolle.
Tolle. Okay.
Some people pronounce it Tolle, Tolle. Everyone knows. So many people know him. Yeah.
I have a friend with the same last name actually. So yeah, interesting. Okay. So then, what do you do now then? Do you do something in this space, like this mental space?
Yeah, over the past 5 years since moving to BC, I've been developing works to support others, right? I'm an intuitive guide, I'm a life transformation coach, and it's all about helping others to realize their patterns in life. You know, one of the main ones is us being addicted to our thoughts, right? Us identifying with our thoughts, not knowing how thought works, how thought is our power as humans to create form. And we're always imagining, using our thoughts to imagine things, or and we're always telling ourselves a story. But, you know, it's now like so many are like, I was so much in my life telling myself this bleak story, the story of limitation, of how sensitive I am, of how, oh, I'm this and that, and how this world is not kind, and etc. Right? So that's the main thing, is to help us realize our relationship with our thoughts, with our identity, right?
Yeah.
And that's a ever constant evolving self-cultivation. And I've been exploring to continue supporting myself and supporting others
Yeah,
at
because it's an
creating
ongoing
change.
thing, right? It's not like a one and done. I'll read a book and I'm good. You know,
Yeah,
it's an everyday practice, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
everyone is so different and unique, and it's going to be a different journey for them to get to that, to you know, to the space where they have that freedom, where they can become aware and they recognize they have choice to relate to the thoughts and the feelings in a different way, their emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and it is a definitely an eye opener. And I like to tell people, it's like, you know, well, you got to choose where you live, right? You got to choose the food that you went and bought at the grocery store. It's kind of like that, you know. But you gotta. It takes a while, though. I mean, I remember how many books I've read on, you know, the power of the mind, basically, because I teach a lot of that myself. And it does take a while to have that aha moment. Like, really, I really have control of everything I do and everything I take in. And I like to also think about it. You know, if you go into like an art museum or like a museum with artifacts, and if you really look at, you know, why they existed in the first place, like the artifacts and these paintings, well, it's all because, you know, cultures, like ancient cultures, wanted to surround themselves with things that they wanted to be like, you know,
Mm.
that they wanted to take in. So a lot of these things are like, okay, there would be this pregnant lady, and she was obviously, you know, pregnant. And so people would buy these things and then put them in their house because they wanted to become fertile and healthy. And, you know, and we lost that for some reason over the years. Now we just buy junk just because it's popular, you know, you know? So, you know, it is like everything that we do. And even, like I said, everything we surround ourselves makes a difference.
Mm.
So, yeah. So, what else do you want to cover here? Let's see. Let's see what I got here. So you had,
I just
um,
wanted to share, actually, you know,
yeah,
that because we are kind of, we become our environment, we become what we choose to infuse ourselves with or entrain ourselves with, right? And I realized, you know, as I started to listen to these people who are living, who are choosing peace and compassion and love, you know, and I was like always listening when I was walking around, and so I was like infusing my inner world with that energy, right? And it's
yeah,
like, so, and then thought, like when it comes to thought, this process of recognizing my addiction to thought, and where did those thoughts come from? All these stories from society, from my parents, what have you. And as I change that relationship, you know, I can like change my vibration or change the quality I'm kind of experiencing. And then the other part now I'm realizing, oh, once I become clear, once I realize the thoughts that come in and I don't have to identify or make them real, then I can have a space where I can become more aware, because I have access to my inner self, to my inner world, where that
yeah.
it will offer thoughts, and there will be the thoughts that are for me, you know, they to, because we do have our insights and our own answers within ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then that's what all the spiritual traditions, all the consciousness traditions and teachers, they're, you know, all the different teachings, they're all teaching to direct us towards that realization of that connection of our own inner power, right? So that's the process that over time, over my life, I'm realizing I've been making my way towards discovering, towards reconnecting with.
So how has your relationships, I guess, been now? How do you feel about them? Do you feel like any negativity about, what happened in the past, or have you kind of just let all that go and just like, it was just something I
Yeah.
experienced at the time, but was all the way I looked at it?
Absolutely. Like, it's so easy now for me to realize all the suffering I went through. Oh, I chose that due to how I was interpreting my life, myself. And and because I've been willing to learn the lesson of that, now, honestly, one of the greatest gifts I'm been giving to myself is realizing I am so grateful for my struggles, for my suffering. The greater the struggle, the greater the peace.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I've experienced so much suffering and struggles in my life. And I'm so grateful that I'm now willing more and more to learn to choose peace, to learn to choose compassion for myself. And that's been so key, is to gain compassion for myself, for what I've been through, for all the choices I make, for all the ways I shamed and judged my choices, comparing myself to what society told me I should be, what my peers or other people told me. And that's been such a great, amazing gift and blessing for me to choose. That
Yeah.
my past has been a great blessing. It's been so, well, challenging, right? And I can easily go into the stories, oh, because I've been marginalized, because I'm
Yeah.
Asian, etc. And I
That's the
certainly,
easy
yeah,
way. That's how I
yeah,
like to look at it now. That was the easy path. We transformed here and got better and learned, and yeah.
yeah.
Now I look at no offense, guys. Now I look at people that actually send out negative vibes as the people that haven't learned yet, and they're taking the easy way out by blaming other people.
Mm.
But so if anybody out there listening to this, can relate to like where they're blaming other people and how, it's all emotional at the end of the day. If they are feeling like negativity around them, then, it's not, I don't know. How can I explain this? I don't know, Daniel, help me out here. How can I explain this?
Ooh, just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Well, mm, one of the things is blaming. Kind of when you're talking about that, I was thinking about blaming others or blaming ourselves, right? It's that mutual.
Yeah.
It's that, because it's only reflecting our
Yep.
blaming ourselves, our judging ourselves. That's why we can judge others. Because I can't.
Because it's kind of like a two-way street. Because
Exactly, it is very
if
much
you're
so.
judging somebody, right? Because you're
Yeah,
like, oh, it's those people that are doing this,
yeah,
and so in a way, we're judging too, because even if they are totally terrible to us and bad to us, it doesn't mean everybody's that way. For one, and then we're I like to call it actually like we're releasing our power to them. So we're just
hmm,
like, okay, I have my inner power. I can either, reflect it out negative or positive. And once you release that power, you're giving them control of your life and your actions,
hmm,
because you're looking for them to give you acceptance to
yeah,
be the person that you want to be, right?
hmm,
And so it is definitely, it does bring you down further, because you not only release your power to them because you're identifying that as the problem, but you don't take control and say, well, wait, they might be the problem or whatever, let that go, but I can change this situation. And then if you never get to that realization, then you're in a vicious cycle. You can never see the way out.
yeah.
Is that how you feel about that? Or would that be
Hmm.
good explanation about that?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The other part for me is whether if I'm like, what kind of what I really want. Do I want conflict or do I want peace? Am I willing to see that my life is an opportunity to learn, or do I have battles to and grievances and revenge to take, right? And then, because it's all learning for me now, I realize. So if I'm busy blaming other people or blaming for others how racist they can be or how whatever discriminatory, then I don't see how I can be like that. I don't learn how I've been like that in unconscious ways myself. And it's only in the learning and me being aware of that can I liberate myself from conflict, from needing to
Mhm.
point and judge. So I mean, when we point the three fingers pointing at ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm blaming and judging, I'm only hindering my own liberation and freedom. I'm only hindering from my own ability to see that I'm judging myself, and first I can just let go of that judgment. And it's like it works, because for me it works like you do some inner work and then you have outer work you can do some outer work, and the inner work gets a little easier and you have a next layer accessible to you to do, right? So it's all this beautiful releasing of the conflict, of the fighting, of the wars, right?
Yeah.
We live
Yeah,
in a
the
culture
energy.
that taxes us so it can go to war with other countries, so we live in this crazy dynamic in this contemporary times of feeding this machine, all these war on drugs, war on consciousness. It's really a war on people seeing themselves as they are and thinking freely and being their loving, powerful selves, right? Because then they
Yeah.
can't control us if we all start to love ourselves and each other. And this is, for me, what it's all about. Why I chose to come from one of the most oppressed groups of people on earth right now. And I do recognize so many people that don't understand the culture of China, don't realize the Chinese people have been highly oppressed for many, many generations, right? It's the system, it's the mentality of the people in charge. I don't even blame the people in charge. I just blame the culture of what
Yeah.
those people are following, that the whole
The
dynamic.
people that taught them, the
Yeah,
generation before, and what's been
yeah,
cycled through the ages,
mm-hmm,
really,
yeah,
they're stuck on a path. And
yeah.
how would you like take a collective and be like, have that awakening, I guess? That's definitely a challenge, how can you like teach so many people at once that, hey, we're looking at it like this. And I guess the only way we could really teach anything like that is just put more positivity out there, make sure that the media and, social networks just have people that, speak up more and, share their story like we are here, with the message of hope. But also, with videos and games and cartoons, even because I see it in cartoons even today. We don't have TV here at the house. I got rid of it February of last year. So just because there is, it's this cultural mentality that it's supposed to be funny, right? It's supposed to be a way to engage people, but in the way we're programming ourselves for one, and then we're programming everybody else that's watching it, and telling them, this is the norm, this is what you should be thinking. And even if it's not intentional, even if it's not like we like, okay, I definitely want people to think like this, so we're going to make it like that, even if it's just like, that's how something they remember from their childhood, and they're just like, oh, we're just going to put that in there, no harm done, don't even really think about it. It's just it's a whole cycle, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely more positivity and stories to cling on, that's more thought provoking. We have too much noise out there that likes to draw our attention, and a lot of people don't know how to use their own minds, like to even think about stuff, to even make decisions. And I think that's an even bigger problem, actually, because they easily cling on to people that want to think for them and control them.
Yeah.
So
That's what happens living in cultures and dynamics where you're not allowed to make your own decisions, in a sense. If you're being so controlled, of course people are going to gravitate towards those kind of behaviors, those dynamics. Okay, if you don't give me the freedom to choose for myself, then yeah, I'm going to play that game in a narcissistic way, right? If you're
that's
going to
exactly what I was going to say. It's very narcissistic, isn't it? It's
it
like the
is, we live,
idea
yeah.
of that. Yeah. The
Hmm.
whole idea of that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the world we live in a way, and all the it's just like that energy of unlimited expansion. And what does it need to do for that, right? It just needs to get us all addicted to contribute to it, and conditions us to give our power away to it, like because it can't take power away from us if we don't agree. It needs to
That's true.
condition, influence us, hypnotize us to give our power away to it,
That's
right?
true.
all the commercials, all the marketing, all the techniques, all these companies and corporations use, right? It's conditions.
I actually just finished the affirmation this morning. I recorded it for the podcast, the One Up podcast, and put it out this morning that says, take back your power. And I talk about that. I talk about how everything you talk, when you talk about people, even if it's good, even if you are saying, hey, so-and-so mentored me, they're an amazing person, you know, and I highly recommend them. But then it becomes like their life. Like you get some people like that's all they talk about. And I'm like, you're releasing your power in that. So I made an affirmation this morning to not only address when you release, you know, your power like that with people, but also products or services, because it could be anything. If you get in the dynamic of just, this is you, like this is, you know, who you are. And yes, it's good that you know, you're sharing this information, but you are releasing so much power. You don't have an identity. You know, you don't have like, who are you? What is your brand? What do you stand for? Because you're just as important, you know, just because something like, you know, I've got a coconut, you know, water here, just because it has a label and like, it's like worldwide or something, doesn't make it more important, you know, than any other coconut water that doesn't have a brand name, you know? So I think, like I said, it all comes down to really thinking about who you are, your identity, and what you want to release to, you know, back to the universe, and you know, saying, hey, you know, this is who I am, and you can either be like you and be your authentic self, or you know, give credit to other things on saying, well, that is who I am, because that's all I talk about, right? That's all I engage in. And yeah, it's definitely it all relates back to the mind, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, because the way I see it, the only way I can make change is in myself. The only control I have is how I respond to the thoughts that come into my experience. That's the only control I have. I'm realizing more and more. I don't, I've caused myself so much struggle and suffering by trying to control things that were beyond my control, right? How other people see me, that's an addiction, that's a fear, and you know, everyone has to certain degrees, and I've experienced that intensely, caring so much about what other people think. That's one of the things about being from mainland China, because that's one of the biggest traumas that I incurred through caring so much about what other people think. You know, that pattern.
You can't change people. I've definitely learned that too. So you can't change people. They have their own mind and have to make their own decisions. So yeah.
But the other part is, I will say that one of the biggest parts of my healing journey has been learning to develop quality relationships, authentic relationships, learning to experience intimacy. Well, with myself first of all. So as I deepened the intimacy and got to know myself more and learned to be kinder to myself and take care of myself, and you know, learn to be proud of myself for taking care of myself, then I actually started recognizing more who I wanted to be a part of my life. And it was other people that was willing to have intimacy with themselves, so they can actually share intimacy with me. So I can actually, you know, show myself to them, not fear that they'll judge me or want to change me. Okay. And they'll show themselves to me so I can learn, so I can see how beautiful this person is. That's one of the most amazing things, is to actually see how much beauty lies in people. That's like, I used to think throughout growing up, I thought that intelligence was outside of me, was in things like this Bose speaker, was in the computer, was on the TV. I thought the intelligence, the technology was way more advanced outside of my body. I had no idea the intelligence in my body, in my energy field, in my consciousness was way beyond what my human mind can grasp. Infinite intelligence accessible to me in my heart, in my field, in my body right now at all times. I had no idea. And that's,
well, I mean, people had to come up with these inventions, right? So
exactly, you know, I know, right?
How did we come up with it if people weren't thinking about it, if they weren't like wanting that to exist in the world? You know, so definitely it all starts with thought, right? And a lot of the thoughts too, I mean, we've got, like, you brushed on it a little bit, but we have those dynamics. We have, the evil, right? The negative, the one that always wants to, like, put us down. And then we have the one that's always trying to guide us, that we kind of just, like, push to the side 99.9% of the time. And that's the one we really need to, like, have on the forefront. And you're like, okay, you lead the way and I'll just let you go. Because a lot of that, I think we're just like, well, we can't be that way. We can't, no, that's not us. Because a lot of it, seems too easy, so we had to take the harder path and go through the struggle, which it really doesn't have to be that way. We just got to, release and let go and say, you know what, let me just trust my instinct here for once, And it's a play on energy in a way too. So yeah, definitely. But thank you, Daniel. We are getting ready to time out here soon, but I totally appreciate you coming on and sharing your amazing journey and everything you've learned with your what would you call it? Would it be called spiritual awakening, or
I don't even like using those kind of terms, or because they have a certain, people spin. Yeah, there's so many connotations and different points of views on all those concepts and terms.
That's true. They do.
It's like it's like life is just this magical evolutionary process of creativity, of learning to love, of discovery, of exploration.
And it's exploration.
We are so creative that we can turn it into great suffering, but we can also turn it into great learning, great compassion, and great joy.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about unresolved trauma, because we all get traumatized in our lives, and when it doesn't get resolved, so we create addictions, and the dopamine addiction is one of the main things that, as you've spoken about, right? The dopamine addiction that creates the addictions in everyone's unique expressions of that causes and sometimes creates the barriers to connecting to the inner self, to the quiet peace that's always available.
Yeah. Right? So, yeah. Well, thank you definitely for coming on again. Is there anything else that you would love to say to anybody listening?
Be willing to have compassion for yourself. Like, compassion, I've learned, means the root word of that root is come, to be with. Passion is to suffer. So we are going to suffer in life. But if we learn to have compassion for ourselves, if we learn to be with our own suffering and not judge our own suffering, not need to try to heal it or change it even, but to be with it, to be with the feelings, then it can heal, because then we can accept it and it can be reintegrated. So that's why I invite people to consider compassion and consider allowing compassion for themselves and how they view themselves and their life and what's occurred in the past.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about digging up ugly events and trying to process it. No, it's about recognizing, the people that hurt you, was very much in pain, in trauma, in hurt themselves. And they were trying to do their best, but this world just unfortunately haven't been able to support ourselves at learning about our traumas and being able to heal it. And now we have this opportunity to gain compassion for ourselves and the things that have happened to us. And through that space, then it creates space where we can then choose what we want to take part in and move forward with.
I like how you put that, especially when you said, with the past trauma, and then you don't want to get absorbed in it. You don't want to like relive it. You just want to, say that basically existed, and then, accept it and, heal basically, but not live in that space. So because you don't want to go back there and, get drawn in, all that negativity. Also, I want to ask you, where do people, okay, so for your spiritual help that you do for other people, where would people connect to you? Where is the best place for them to go?
They can email me. I'm just developing my new website right now. It'll be under findinghenosis.com.
Finding Henosis.
Finding Henosis, yeah.
Henosis or Kenosis?
Henosis, Henosis.
Yeah. Okay, spell that one more time.
Henosis.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Henosis.
findinghenosis.com.
Yes, and they can also find me on Facebook. I also have a Finding Henosis Facebook page. I haven't, yeah, it's been fairly dormant, but I'm now moving forward going to be more active on that. So,
Okay.
and
So they can
finding Henosis at gmail.com as well.
in Gmail. Okay, at gmail.com. All
Yeah.
right. Got it. All
Mhm.
right. Take care, Daniel. It's been a lovely time talking to you today. And I wish you all the best on this lovely day. And of course, future as well. But I'm pretty sure that our paths will meet again. Daniel actually is a part of my Facebook family. So I'll see you again, Daniel. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this conversation. Yes, all the
Thank
best to
you.
you and yours as well.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.